Hello and welcome to Startup Street. I'm Ritu Singh and here are the top headlines from the startup space. IPO-bound unicorn Oyo Hotels is in talks with multiple private equity firms to raise around $500 million at an expected valuation of $6 billion. Insurtech startup Onsurity raises $24 million in Series B funding led by the World Bank's International Finance Corporation. Existing investors Nexus Venture Partners and Quinoa Capital also participate in the round. This takes the total funding raised by the startup to $40 million. Pep, a mobile-centric online marketplace for content, raises $2.5 million in seed funding from India Quotient and their marquee angel investors. This includes Vidit Atre and Sanjeev Barnwal, founders of Meesho, Kunal Shah from Cred, and Farooq Adam from Find. Collaborative commerce platform Oyo raises 14.4 crore rupees in a series seed funding round led by Prime Venture Partners. Oyo had earlier secured 4.1 crores in a pre-seed funding round from a consortium of investors which included Good Capital, Upsparks Capital and Eximus Ventures. Electric vehicle company Ather Energy, to make its international foray, will launch its flagship model in the Himalayan kingdom. In line with its ecosystem approach to market creation, the company will also roll out its public fast-charging infrastructure. Spotify is tweaking its free service in India. The company plans to move a few features behind a subscription and place emphasis on song recommendations. This in a possible bid to expand its paid subscriber base in the country. These changes come into effect today. And NPCI International enters into a strategic partnership with Al Etihad Payments. As per the agreement, NIPL and AEP will work together to build, implement and operationalize UAE's national DCS. NIPL will also assist AEP in formulating operating regulations for their domestic card scheme. Well, those are the headlines on the startup space. Now, Oyo Hotels is in talks with multiple private equity firms to raise around $500 million at an expected valuation of $6 billion. Sources have told CNBC-TV18 that of the $500 million, about $300 million would be by a primary sale of shares and $200 million through a secondary sale of shares. Nisha Podar has got those details and joins in with what she's picked up. Nisha.
That's right. Sources with direct knowledge have shared with CNBC-TV18 that a massive fundraise of about $500 million is what Oyo is really initiating a process on. In fact, it is in talks with some of the large bulge bracket private equity firms to really raise funds. This could be a combination of both primary as well as secondary. Sources with direct knowledge share that about $300 million could be primary fundraising, while $200 million could be through the secondary sale of shares. Now, the valuation that the company is really looking for is a point of contention. We have to see how the investor demand and traction really picks up at this point on the company's valuation. But the asked price and expectation from the company side could be over $6 billion is what we gather from sources with direct knowledge. An investment bank has been hired by Oyo to really look and gauge at the demand and the bulge bracket private equity's interest in the company to invest, and also the valuation match that the company is really looking at. So at the moment, we do gather that private equity firms are in talks with the company for looking at this particular investment. Also, remember that the company reached profitability and their IPO plans are delayed, and therefore the use of proceeds could be two-pronged for the company. First of all, $600 million of debt, part repayment of that, as well as to infuse growth capital into the company. So that's the purpose for which a massive fundraising plan is being proposed by Oyo, is what we gather.
Nisha, thanks very much for bringing us that story, a $6 billion valuation that Oyo is looking at. Now, moving on, Insurtech startup Onsurity today announced that it has raised $24 million in a Series B funding round led by International Finance Corporation. The round also saw participation from its existing investors, including Nexus Venture Partners and others. The company proposes to use these funds to drive growth, forge partnerships, and a portion of this will also be allocated towards the company's efforts to chart its path to profitability. Joining me now to talk about this is Onsurity's co-founder and CEO, Yogesh Agarwal. Yogesh, welcome to Startup Street and thank you very much for your time here. If you could start by telling us about this funding. Your Series A was about $15–16 million and now this additional $24 million. What's the plan? What's the company valued at now?
The valuation still remains undisclosed at this particular point of time, but from the last valuation to this particular valuation, we got a reasonable uptake from uprise in the valuation.
Okay, so it was an uptake from the previous round, but before we get into more details of the funding for our viewers, if you could give us a sense of how your subscription-based model works and what kind of revenues you're currently generating.
So basically, in terms of our product is a unique India first in kind of a healthcare membership, which we provide this particular subscription to a lot of small businesses, small and medium-sized businesses, which they subscribe for their employees and family members. Within this membership, healthcare membership, they get different health benefits like health insurance, accidental insurance, along with different wellness benefits like teleconsultations, health checkups. So in put together, the membership becomes a very comprehensive benefit for the employees and their family members. In terms of our revenue, we almost crossed more than 100 crore in this particular financial year and are growing at a reasonable pace as per our business plan.
Okay, about 100 crores of revenue already clocked in. So tell us about this $24 million that you've just raised. You want to facilitate an unparalleled claims experience. You want to provide coverage to 5 million lives by 2026. How do you plan to go about this? How will you use these funds?
So most of this funding we will be investing in order to develop our technology, where in this particular technology product, what we are trying to develop with our insurance partners as well. In the overall objective of the technology is that how can we actually make the claim experience of our customers more and more smoother? How can we use cutting edge technology and AI to make sure that the current turnaround time for the claim experience can be reduced down significantly and can be an industry first claim experience for our members. This will be the prime objective of this particular funding, that how can we enhance our technology. Then apart from that, we will be consuming this particular fund to actually reach to more number of SMEs, so that by 2025 we can reach to more than 50,000 SMEs and touch base more than 5 million members on our platform.
Yogesh, a portion of this funding, your press statement said, will also be used towards your efforts to chart your path to profitability. If you could tell us what your current bottom line is at and how long before you break even.
So at this particular point of time, we are unit economics positive. So from day one, we were trying to build business more fundamentally. We are unit economics positive, but technology keeps on becoming one of the element where we are actually investing a lot of capital expenditure. So that is where might be on the bottom line or on the PAT basis, we might not be profitable at this stage. But over the next 2 years, as we expand our portfolio, expand our businesses, this fixed overheads or fixed cost, what we are investing out in order to build the technology, it will start generating more returns, and that will help us to go into the path to profitability over the next 2 years.
You said you look at small businesses, MSMEs, contractual workforce, startups. Give us a sense of where insurance penetration is at in that subset. It's low overall for the country overall, of course, but what is the headroom for growth for Onsurity? Because the pie, of course, is large, but there are plenty of competitive players in this space as well.
So over here, if I will just give you some numbers, only 5% of the SME is currently penetrated with the insurance product. So there's a 95% under penetration in the market. We always talk about insurance as always an under penetrated product, but when we look very deeply through a magnifying lens, it's always the SME which is the most highly under penetrated sector, and that's why we keep on building our product stack, tech stack, in order to develop and penetrate deeper into this unserved and under-penetrated market.
Yogesh, thanks very much for joining us on CNBC-TV18 and sharing your thoughts. On that note, let's move on. The e-commerce festive sales kicked off on the 6th of October with discounts and deals across platforms like Flipkart, Amazon, Myntra, Meesho and others. My colleague Shilpa Ranipeta spoke to Manish Tiwari, who is the country manager of the India consumer business for Amazon India, 1 hour before Amazon's Great Indian Festive Sale kicked off on Sunday, on what the early indicators of the sale were pointing to and if there were any concerns of a slowdown.
I think I can safely comment. I mean, it's too early to give numbers. It's like just 24 hours and it's a 30-day sale event. But if 24 hours is, or 23 hours is any indication, I would sort of say with some confidence that this will definitely be the biggest event we've ever seen. And again, what our seller and brand partners are saying that for almost all of them, I'm yet to hear an exception, it promises to be the highest ever day for them. Like I said, still 1 hour to go. And the good news is we are hearing some great success stories from some of our big brand partners in electronics. We are hearing the same from some of our partners in fashion and luggage. There were some special deals. A lot of grocery brands and sellers did rupee 1 deals. They've been super duper successful.
You know, Manish, Redsia had said that the last few quarters have seen historical lows on the back of the macroeconomic headwinds that we've been seeing. Have you seen an impact of this, especially in categories like smartphones?
You know, I think there are a couple of things which we need to sort of look into. I think if you take some of the electronic categories, including mobiles and laptops, what had happened is during the COVID years, the buying patterns had changed. So suddenly, you know, you required like 5 laptops at home and you wanted the best specs one because your life depended on it in terms of office or school work. And therefore, during those couple of years, some of these categories completely went through the roof, especially, you know, laptops and iPads and office furniture, monitors. Then what we saw, especially middle of last year and almost into Q2 of this year, these categories did slow down considerably. The brands started scaling up their innovations. The sentiment, I mean, there were these murmurs about inflation, prices going up. We didn't see any of it in the last 2 sales, both in July and in August. So even as we were heading into Diwali, all signs were green.
You know, this festive season, one of the interesting trends that I've seen has been on the loyalty programs. You also launched a special Prime Shopping Edition also. What's the idea behind this and how's the adoption of Prime been in the run-up to the festive season?
Yeah, we are super excited with the progress the Prime program has made in India. It's one of the fastest growing locales for Prime members across the world. There are a lot of work and experiments we keep on doing for Prime, but overall we are super excited the way it's moving. And even today, if you look at it, more than half of our Prime customers actually come from smaller towns.
All right, Amazon, they're expecting another stellar year for sales this time around. Shilpa, thanks very much for taking us through that conversation. It's time for a short break, but up next, as the Israel-Hamas war enters day 3, we gauge the impact on the Indian tech sector, an exclusive conversation with Zoho's co-founder when we return. welcome back. You're watching Startup Suite. Now, the renewed conflict in Israel could mean big uncertainties for the tech sector. That's the word coming in from Zoho's Sridhar Vembu. In an exclusive chat with Jude Sanith, Zoho's co-founder and CEO also said that while the company began seeing a pronounced slowdown in global customer growth starting September, its India business continues to shine bright. Here's a slice of that conversation.
First, I'll come to the silver lining. Our fastest growing market in the world now is India, and it's been for some time, but particularly in these uncertain times, our India business has held up quite well. And that's what is the most interesting part of the story. And the global picture has gotten worse, and that was before what has happened in the Middle East in the last couple of days. Right. So it's really now that has thrown all projections off track. I don't think at this point, no one in the technology business can be very sure of what is ahead, because we have to resolve this huge uncertainty hanging over us. But even before that, before what happened in the Middle East, the economies were slowing, and we could see that in our own numbers. Until August, things were coming along quite well. In September, we saw the slowdown, and it seemed to get worse as the month progressed.
If you grew in India 37% for the year 2022, what was the global number like in the same period?
Yeah, the global number is closer to about 20%, 22%. So India was a significant premium over global growth, and which means that India is gaining in terms of global rankings for us. And very soon it will be the number 2 market for us in the world, right after the US. And in the next 5 to 10 years, I believe it will be the number 1 market. That's where we are heading.
Right. So right about now, India does contribute 10% of Zoho.
A little more than that.
A little more than 10%. Yeah. So in 5 years'
just to put that in perspective, 10 years ago, it was close to 0%.
Right.
And now it is so rapidly grown. And it's now, it's at the current growth rate, that's why we are focused so much on India.
Right. So in 5 years from now, if India were to become your number 1 market, what would the contribution of India be to the Zoho revenue?
It probably will easily exceed 20% by then. And if it exceeds 35-40%, we would be the number 1 market in the world. Right. That's where it is heading in the next 10 years.
No, Sridhar, I'm just a little curious. You did say that things were going along pretty fine till August, whereas September, dealt a little bit of a body blow in terms of how the economy was doing. Right. If you could just, tell me what exactly was it about the September numbers that proved so worrisome? What was the September growth number?
Let's see, we track both new customer acquisition, existing renewals, all of this. And these are, the number of data points we get. Like easily we get like 200,000-300,000 discrete data points every month. We track all of that. And that's where we saw that across the board, every geography, every product, and renewals, new customers, everywhere we saw that deceleration.
But which was the one data point that actually caused a fair degree of concern, for you to actually highlight how dire the situation is?
The primary one big number I look at, the new rate of new customer acquisition. So you have a vast pool of 700,000 customers. We also acquire a lot of new customers every month. That number has actually done very well till August. Then we saw a slowdown in September. Right. It had no particular reason at all. It just simply seemed to slow.
And what was the slowdown?
It was significant, maybe about 10-15% drop in where it was heading before.
Going forward, Sridhar, an announcement that you've made today is the launch of Click, your collaborative workspace stack. It's something that you think can really help you, again, with the whole unified concept of software stacks, do better business with regard to customers who want it all in one place. What does this bring to the table really, especially at a time when you're seeing people go back to the office 5 days a week? How relevant is a Click in today's time and place?
Click actually brings all of the business, all of the apps inside this messaging interface. Within that simple, easy to understand interface that everyone in the world knows, they're bringing all of the business together, and including all the conferencing capabilities, audio, video, meetings, and Click rooms that we are launching. And now we talk about the remote, the work from home context. Really where it's heading is not just everybody returning to central big offices, but to the hub and spoke models, like the Tenkasi model. I think that is what is going to be more durable.
What is the customer acquisition like as far as patronage for Click is concerned? I believe there's some very heavy migration from Microsoft's products and other products as well to Click.
We are seeing substantial traction among Slack and Microsoft Teams users, and we are seeing that because Click is much, much more refined, really beautiful interface.
Well, that's Zoho's co-founder in conversation with my colleague Jude. Moving on, the funding winter has hit the startup space in India this year. But Agritech startups have been hit even harder. From receiving $1.2 billion in funding in FY22, Agritech companies have only seen $700 million last fiscal. So what should Agritech companies do to stay afloat? My colleague Akhil Vishwanath finds out.
Two years ago, India's agritech startups experienced a growth spurt, fertilized by venture capital funding. However, with the onset of the funding winter, the climate turned harsh. Funding for this sunrise sector dropped 45% from $1.2 billion in FY22 to about $700 million in FY23. That's as per an FSG report. So, for growth with fewer dollars, what should the playbook be, and how are investors assessing the market? To find out, I am at the Omnivore and Kalari Capital's event, Agritech, Now and Beyond.
People are beginning to understand what this new normal is. This new normal does not look like 2021. It does not look like 2020. Honestly, as someone who's invested in this ecosystem for a long time, it looks like 2018. The prices that we thought were normal in 2018 are suddenly normal in 2023. We've kind of come up, come down. The crazy surge that we saw, I don't think we'll necessarily repeat that, but I do think things will get warmer and warmer, and we'll start to see good times again, maybe a year from now or so. But I think good companies, right, that have good business models, when they come out to raise, will be able to raise money. That wasn't the case 12 months ago. It is becoming the case again.
But investors are setting some tough rules, particularly for mature agritech startups. Late-stage startups were the worst hit in 2022 with a funding slump of nearly 40%, as per an Omnivore Ag Funder report. Growth-stage startups, however, saw a marginal dip in funding, but now even they have to follow a strict playbook, and growth at any cost is not on the plate any longer.
Playbook fundamentally is about profitability, product market fit, and cash flow cycles that make sense in terms of working capital. I think that's going to be the playbook for the foreseeable future. I don't think we're returning to a zero interest rate environment anytime soon. And so that's what companies are going to have to focus on. And I think as the growth stage starts to heat up, that's what growth investors are going to expect. And so companies should be preparing themselves now for when they come out in 2024 and try to raise growth rounds, knowing that that's where the market is.
Over the last few years, tech-enabled platforms or marketplaces became the hottest thing in agritech. Now startups working closer to the farm are in favor. Kalari Capital's Vamshi Krishna Reddy says startups must focus on boosting India's overall agricultural yield, which he says is 40% lower than global benchmarks. Boosting crop yield could also help startups get better margins. The problem is that while tools such as soil health monitors and crop disease detectors have been introduced, they haven't been able to scale.
A lot of technologies and founders have built these solutions. But I think the important thing is how can you build solutions which can be scalable. Like drones have been able to do it for a particular space, and they're actually a very good model for us, because then they can spray hectares of lands in an easy and efficient and cost-effective way. But there's a lot more problems to be solved at the soil level, at the weeding level, at the tilling level. So this is where I was talking about tools which can come in, which are very, very relevant to India. Tools which can actually cater to smaller farm sizes within India, but have the scale to actually, develop and grow massively.
Omnivore, which recently announced the first close of its new $150 million Agri-Climate Fund, is also looking for startups working closer to the farm. The three key themes for the new fund are Agri-Food Life Sciences, Rural FinTech, and Climate-Smart Agriculture. Through its Omnex Bio initiative to support agri-life sciences and biotech startups, the Venture Capital Fund has backed 4 startups, with the most recent investment coming in Alt-M. The startup was founded by 2 former executives at Tesla to help the lab-to-market journey of biomaterials, which could help reduce carbon footprint.
Whenever researchers and sort of scientists try to scale, that's where they don't understand the concepts of supply chain, manufacturability, scaling up. And this becomes sort of the valley of death for biotech companies.
And what we're trying to do now with All-Time, after we return to India in 2021, to sort of make in India and for the world. We're just trying to apply the principles of manufacturing and production rigor that we learned in the world of automotive through the last decade and at Tesla, now to the world of biotechnology and biomaterials. So that is what we're trying to bring to reality with All-Time.
In exchange for funding, investors have set some tough challenges to India's agritech startups. They not only have to scale with sustainability, with strong unit economics and a path to profitability, they also have to bring innovation at the farm level and not just create marketplaces. They are also tasked with bringing climate-friendly practices and boosting farm income for India's 113 million farmers. This funding winter, India's farmlands have turned into battlegrounds for agritech startups. With camera person Saurabh Chauhan, this is Akhil Vishwanath for CNBC-TV18.
All right, on that note, it's a wrap on this edition of Startup Street. Thanks for watching. More news and updates will continue on the other side.